Former President Donald Trump was indicted today for trying to overturn his loss to Joe Biden.
We have to win in November, or we're not going to have Pennsylvania. They'll change the name. They're going to change the name of Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvanians have a unique role with democracy and freedom. We have seen Pennsylvanians rise up at the ballot box.
The work of making this world resemble one that you would prefer to live in is a lunch pail job.
They say talk about what you know. Well, this is one of those rare occasions where I can say that I actually know something. Hi, and welcome to the Keystone Reckoning Podcast for September 18th, 2024. I'm your host, Jesse White. So I know it's been a while, but I don't know about you, but I've got this sense of frustration and fury and existential dread. And I think I've basically taken my wife to the limit as to what she's willing to listen to over breakfast every morning. So I decided I needed a positive way to talk about what I'm feeling and seeing. And hopefully we can use this as a way to kind of vent a little bit and kind of get through these next 49 days together and whatever shenanigans come afterwards. Because I could tell you, I've been in politics for a long time. 46 years old. I've been doing this since I was 18. And I can say without question, and those of you that are familiar with me know, I've been in some sticky, interesting situations in my time in politics. I've never felt more, and I thought about if there's another word to describe it, and there really isn't. I've never been more scared of what I'm seeing. Because not only have we watched Donald Trump and J.D. Vance just go to places that are so beyond the pale of what anybody would have ever considered the norms in American politics. I mean, we're way, way, way past it. But the fact that people are buying into it or looking the other way or finding ways to rationalize it. And that's a discussion we're going to have moving forward. But today I want to talk about an extension of what happened in Springfield at the debate, because to me, this one hits a lot closer to home and it's just kind of developing now. And that has to do with what's happening in the town of Charleroi in Washington County, Pennsylvania. And to give you a little context, I actually know Charleroi. When I was in high school, I shockingly was not an athlete. I didn't play any sports, but I was in the gifted program. And one of the things we did, we competed in what they called academic league, or as we affectionately called it, geek league. And this was way before it was cool to be a geek or a nerd. But the way it worked is we would go to a school maybe once or twice a month, and we'd have academic competition. And I will say, to toot my own horn a little bit, I was an all-star. But we'd go there and we'd have these competitions, and then we'd have lunch afterwards somewhere nearby, which, so like Pizza Hut, McDonald's, the really healthy places for high schoolers to eat. Well, that was Charleroi. Charleroi, either middle school or high school. So I remember going to Charleroi at a young age. I lived like maybe 20 minutes away, a little bit further south in Washington County. So I knew Charleroi. Went to college in Washington County. Worked for newspapers in Washington County and really got to know Washington County in a real tangible way. Then when I was elected to the state legislature, a big chunk of my district was Washington County. Now, I didn't have Charleroi, but I had a lot of the areas around it. And one of the things that we did was we got the gaming money from when the Meadows Casino opened. We were in kind of a unique position in the county because we were smaller but had a big casino. The point is we had about $8 or $9 or $10 million every year to spend on community projects. I was on the board that oversaw and decided and determined where that money went. And we had presentations and everybody came in and wanted something out of it. And a lot of it was community revitalization and things like that. And I pushed very hard to keep it out of just the big developers, mainly because of communities like Charleroi. They are, for those of you that don't know, Charleroi is kind of the post-Rust Belt boom era little town. It's not a city, it's a borough. And there are a lot of challenges there. because there were, a lot of the, they're on the Monongahela River. There was a lot of the, the steel coal industry that, that was, went through there. Then there was a glass plant that has just that had closed. That cost about 300 jobs. They were good union jobs for the most part. And as they're a borough, for those of you that don't know, boroughs have unique challenges because they're landlocked. There's only so much room. It's not like they're townships where there's a lot of room where they can bring in housing developments and things like that. Pretty much everything in a borough that can be developed has already been developed. So you've got that problem. And it's just an area that is in desperate need of revitalization. And they were trying all sorts of things. There was, they were trying to bring like a local theater back and do anything they could to kind of spur revitalization in this community. Yeah, they were working hard. It just wasn't happening. So, and I'll admit, I've been out of Washington County for 5 years now, and to which I've had no regrets. And so I missed this when it happened, but apparently a couple of years ago, there was an influx of Haitian migrants that came into Charleroi legally. That's the key word, and found work. And there have been, there was an interview with one of the borough council members with some right-wing media source, and they were talking to him about it. And the guy, who is admittedly a Republican, he's on Trump's campaign, team, so to speak, he's a supporter, talked about the challenges that this migration has brought. But he did it in a way that was very genuine and very honest, where he said, look, there are challenges here with things like, careless driving and things like that. And that got picked up and they ran with it. And I think it was the Daily Wire. I could be wrong, but I'll put it in the show notes. But there was an article that right after the debate where they said, oh, look, here's another place where there's this migrant invasion, right? And so now, all eyes are turning to it. And there was and I'll put the link to this in the show notes too. There was a story by the CBS affiliate, who I have no love for whatsoever, KDKA, but they did it as basically a straight news story. And they interviewed 3 people. 2 of the 3 people were just like straight up racist. I mean, the one guy was like, everywhere I go, they are there bothering us. And then there was another lady, and she's like, well, they have their own stores, but I would never go into them. And then the third lady was a woman named Nancy Ellis, who I've known for a long time. And I believe she was the mayor, or was on council, one or the other. But she's formerly, I don't think she still is, but she called it as it was. And she said, look, these people are a bunch of racists, right? The problem is that if you see what's happened in Springfield, Ohio, where there's a whole list of all the places that have been on lockdown and have bomb threats. And it's like every government building, all the schools, elementary schools on lockdown. And it's been clearly debunked that this is just not true in Springfield. And it's now been debunked in Charleroi. And this is something I have to, every now and again, I have to admit that someone's doing the right thing on the Republican side. It's rare. But the state senator down there, Cameron Bartolotta, who I can't stand, she represents a lot of my old district of Washington County. I think she's totally sold out to the shale industry. She's a fraud. I think she's a terrible public servant. It's just plain and simple. But I have to give her credit, because she did go out in the paper today and say, this is absolutely not true. These are legal migrants. They are here as people doing work. They're just trying to live their lives. This has been grossly distorted and misrepresented, and it needs to stop. And I was like, where bam you go, girl. Okay. But it also told me, it was a barometer of, wow, this is how messed up this is that now you've got me saying, good job, Cameron Bartolotta, which I don't know if I've ever said out loud or privately. And the reason being, you look at what's happening in Springfield, it's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. And when given the opportunity to walk it back, you've got J.D. Vance going on the Sunday shows saying they're creating stories. I mean, I watched that live. I could not believe what he said. He said, if we have to create stories, that's what we're going to do. And he was being interviewed by Dana Bash on CNN, and it was like, wait a minute. Even she kind of went past it. And then I guess her producer or somebody got in her ear and was like, whoa, you need to walk that back for a minute. And she was like, wait a minute, did you just say you're creating stories? And I've been a candidate, I've been a consultant, I've done all the things. I don't know of a single candidate on earth that would not have had the wherewithal to be like, you know what, I'm sorry, I misspoke. That's not what I meant to say. What I meant to say was blah, blah, blah. This clown just dove right into it head first and was like, he repeated it. And he's like, he's doubling, tripling down on it. And it's become so obvious to me that, to everybody, right, that they are just all in on racism, division, throwing out people that, scaring the hell out of people about anybody, quite frankly, with dark skin. We're not hearing this about Swedish immigrants, and then saying we're going to get rid of them. And if you look, I've made the mistake of being more active on Twitter because I think it's important to kind of see what the other side's saying. And good God, has Elon Musk rigged that whole algorithm because it's nothing but right-wing garbage. But it's only getting worse and worse and worse. And the fact that people are buying into it and are saying like, yeah, and there's, the xenophobia and the racism and the fear, like people that quite frankly need to know better. Like they've got people that I know are smarter than this, or I thought were smarter than this. Clearly they're not, right? They're buying into it. And it's to the point where I'm looking at this and I'm like, I know this town. I know what this is. I know people that still live there. This is not how they should be portrayed. And you're seeing it happen in real time, especially given, and I think this is where the pushback is coming from locally, especially given what has happened in Springfield, where they realized it was totally baseless and Trump and Vance and MAGA are just all in on it, and they don't care. They do not care. If, and think to, I hate to think this way, but like think to the worst case scenario, right? What's the worst thing that could possibly happen? Would be, someone actually goes beyond calling it a bomb threat and actually like it blows up a school. God forbid. I mean, it's as a parent, that's like the worst nightmare, right? If that were to happen, well, let's say, let's go back. Let's not make it quite so gruesome, right? Let's say they found like a pipe bomb outside of a school. They found it, they defused it, nobody got hurt. That's the better scenario, right? Let's not go to the worst place. As well as I do that Trump's first response would be, well, this is a response to the hateful rhetoric from Kamala Harris. Because he did it after this second, quote, assassination attempt, which I'm sorry, didn't happen, was not really an assassination attempt. There's nothing about it that rings true, especially given that Trump was having maybe the worst news cycle that an American political campaign has had since the founding of the Republic. He immediately doubled down on this was all Kamala Harris's fault. And then you're seeing the right wing try to justify it because they're saying like, oh, well, this is the, both sides is a kind of thing. And luckily this time around, after the initial assassination, which I also have thoughts on, but clearly something went down there, right? There was that whole, we all have to dial it down. Now we're seeing and hearing, and this is the camp I'm firmly in. No, y'all need to dial it down. Because first of all, both shooters were Republicans, right? Both shooters were people that could have, were clearly in mental health problems. Both shooters would not have likely been able to legally possess the firearms they possessed if there were common sense gun control laws in place, right? So this whole, well, it's Kamala Harris and the Democrats and the left's fault. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous because you do not see the left or anybody with common sense, right? This isn't really a right or left thing. This is like a sane, insane thing. You don't see anybody calling for political violence on the left. You just don't. Whereas on the right, it's so prevalent. I mean, then Elon Musk comes out and calls for the assassination of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Hey, how much more brazen do you need to be? This is not an us problem. this is a them problem. Well, actually, it's our problem, but this is their fault thing. And we cannot, 49 days after an election, let them off the hook on this. There's just no way, because they are shameless. Any sort of attempt at civility is viewed as weakness. And, when we talk about ending them and making them go away or whatever, everybody knows what we're talking about. We're talking about politically, right? Like, and yes, we should all choose our words carefully. No doubt about it. But the point is, it's not even a comparison, right? It's just not a comparison. It's not apples to oranges. It's apples and Goodyear blimps, right? It's just not the same. And to pretend that it is basically letting them off the hook. Especially because they just won't stop. They just keep going, and going. And so for those reasons, and looking at as we get further along and the polls are coming out, and I'll do a whole other episode about polling and why I think we need to basically ignore the polls this time out. And this is someone has done polling. I've been a pollster. I know how to read these things. I know how to run these things. As they get more and more desperate, it's only going to get worse. And I talked earlier about frustration and existential dread. To me, the existential dread is coming not only from where we are and this horrible place that we are, and it's just horrible. I mean, the more I think about it, just the worse I feel. But where it's going to end up. And this one with Charleroi, I saw it online a couple of days ago, and I thought, dear God, please don't let this get any traction. Don't let this go on. And of course now it is. And I commend the people on the ground for pushing back. The local officials for being responsible. Even the guy that gave who was on Trump's campaign team, he said, I did not know I was being recorded. That he said for sure. And he kind of paraphrased, like, this was not what I meant. He said, look, there are challenges. Well, you know what? That's anytime I've been a local elected official. I was a township supervisor. There are always challenges, and they talked about, for example, crime is now out of control and they've got to, they're making the taxpayers pay for all these, for new, for additional police, and it's raising your taxes. What they leave out is Charleroi has a regional police department because so many of the municipalities down there are cash strapped, right? They have a shared regional police department. And I believe the budgeted increase, because they're about to pass their budget, I think it was something like $73,500. I could be wrong on the exact amount, but that was the ballpark of what it is. Anybody that's ever done municipal budgeting knows that for police, $73,500 doesn't even get you, it might get you one police officer in terms of salary, benefits, equipment. It's probably even more than that if I looked it up. So they're trying to make it sound like there's this mass, that they have to put tanks on the streets, right, to deal with the Haitian migrants that are overrunning the town. You're talking about the equivalent of probably less than one uniformed police officer or one vehicle, right, like one police car, for a regional police department that serves multiple communities that are spread out, around the borough of Charleroi. They have to cover some ground. Because the only other alternative is if you don't have the local police, then the state police have to cover it. And obviously the coverage really, goes downhill. So they're being responsible by providing local police coverage. And the budget increase, I am certain, would be basically the same whether there were Haitian migrants there or not. Because, by the way, they didn't show up yesterday. They've been there for 2 or 3 years now, right? They're making it sound like there were like a bunch of rickety boats that floated up the Mon River and everybody jumped off and basically took over the town. That is not what happened by any stretch of the imagination. This is a situation where these folks came here. They were doing all the right things. They're legal. There are, look, if you look at a couple thousand people, are you going to find a bad actor here or there? Sure. But I'd be willing to bet that if you took the crime in Charleroi and you stacked it proportionally by the Haitian migrants versus everybody else, I think it's a pretty clear bet where the higher crime rate would lie. I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. And so you've got this situation where it's being grossly misrepresented. And they're trying to make something out of nothing. And the consequences of this go far beyond political. These are lifetime consequences for these people. These people are going to, the local elected officials, the migrants, they are going to be looking over their shoulders for the rest of their lives. Because you have put a spotlight on them. You know, these people get doxxed, their information gets out there. They didn't ask for this, they didn't want this, and they sure as hell did not expect this. The division that is probably already taking place in this community, given the incredibly racist comments made by two of the residents, and you really do have to watch them because it was the most insane thing ever. I told a friend, you know, I actually did have Washington County racism on my 2024 bingo card for the election. I'm honestly kind of surprised it took this long. You know, that's a story for another day. And again, not upset to be out of there. But this is real. There are real life consequences. The children that have come to this country for a better life, like everybody's children did at some point. The parents that brought their kids here for a better life, which almost everybody did at some point. They are now going to have to deal with this, explain it. These kids who have these racist parents, and clearly, if they're willing to say it on television, I'm sure they're willing to say it at the dinner table. And what is going to be said in these schools, what is going to be said to these kids, what is going to happen in the cafeteria and the playground and in the classroom is real. And those are seeds that are being planted now that will bear fruit for years and years to come. And that fruit is going to be rotten. And Trump and Vance and his people do not give a damn. The cruelty is the point. We're seeing it unfold in real time. So, yeah, I'm angry. Yeah, I'm frustrated. Yes, I have a sense of dread because I can see what's coming and it's terrifying. There's no way to sugarcoat it. By the way, today is National Voter Registration Day. Although I would assume if you're listening to this podcast, you're already voting. Here's a challenge. Go find 3 people that you know that you don't think are registered to vote and ask them. And if they are not registered, sit down with them, go to vote.org and walk them through the process. It is not illegal to help somebody register. You can't harvest ballots for mail-in voting. You can help them register. Do it. 3 people. 3 people. That's all it takes. If everybody does their part, we can actually turn the tide and make this happen and put an end to this absolute insanity. Thank you for listening. We're going to do this again tomorrow. We're going to do this every day until the election. And I'm sure for quite a bit afterwards as we deal with what comes next. I'm Jesse White. Thank you and have a great day.
Well, that's it then. And we've saved people the trouble of voting. What's next?
Our point is that
I understood the point. We're going to South Carolina to set up Illinois. When I ask what's next, it means I'm ready to move on to other things. So, what's next?
We're done.
Fantastic.